Good morning. It is wonderful being in this room, and I miss most of you, but hopefully we'll be together in person soon. Before I give my speech, I do want to congratulate Jesse and Chad on their wonderful marriage. We're so excited for you and joyful with you. And Maureen, I want to express my sympathy to you on the death of your mother. I've had the pleasure of meeting her several times, and I extend again my sympathy to you. In regard to my speech, let's start with our present president, our current president. President Biden, our 46th president, is expected that he will choose to have a US presidential library and museum. So that's my first main point. It's up to the president to decide if they want a library and museum or not. President Trump, the jury is still out. He's still thinking about it. So we're not sure if he's going to move forward with that or not. The predecessor of President Trump, President Obama, within his first term said, yes, I definitely want a library and a museum. Now, the second thing that the president has to decide once they decide to have a presidential library and museum is location. That is critical. Where is this going to be? And again, it's up to the president. And the location is what city, what town is significant to this person. And that's where he wants to put his presidential library and museum. If you look at Obama, he chose the city of Chicago, not his birthplace, but where he and his first lady had spent many years. President Obama taught at Chicago Law School for 12 years. He was a state senator from Illinois, then became a US senator. So had a lot of connections with that city. If we look at our two local boys or men as presidents, we'll see that President Eisenhower chose Abilene, Kansas. That again was not his birthplace. He was born in Denison, Texas, but he again grew up in Abilene. And if you look at our other local person, President Truman, he was born in Lamar, Missouri, but he chose Independence where he grew up, and he and his wife were had their married life here and lived here before their White House days as well as after. The location is important, especially if they have that personal tie, because oftentimes there's a home connected with the location. And again, taking our two local boys, the home of President Eisenhower is on the actual property. So you can go through the home and you will just be overwhelmed by how did 5 boys live in this home? It's a tiny 2-story home. And then the next question is, and how did the parents keep their sanity? President Truman home is also in Independence, not actually on the property, but you can go through it once it's about 4 to 5 blocks from the museum. So location is critical, not to mention the pride it brings to the area and also the economic advantages. Let's turn back 100 years, almost 100 years. Who started all this? Well, that would be President Franklin Roosevelt. And in 1939, he said, we need to have a place to store all these papers and documents and books and articles that are written about our administration, and also a place for our artifacts, a museum, where we put, as President Roosevelt did, his wheelchair, which he was confined to, and because of paralysis, polio that he contracted when he was a young man. The car that he drove, and he was so proud of it, even as a paralyzed man, that he could use this car by hand devices. So these people, President Roosevelt was the brainchild of this. But knowing President Roosevelt, we know it wasn't just an idea, he was going to implement it. And this is how he did it. Just an ingenious idea. Get both the public and the private sector to be involved in this. And how he did this was that privately, the money would be raised by a non-profit foundation that the president would establish. And they would raise the money to buy the land and build the building, the structure, the library and the museum. And then upon completion, it would be turned over to the government and supervised and administered by them. And that's the NARA, the National Archives and Record Administration. And that's the way it works today. And that's how, and President Roosevelt implemented this. Not only does he have the idea how to do it, but he built his presidential library and museum about 100 miles north of Chicago, of New York City at Hyde Park. And there he has his museum and his library. Now let's go back to why do we do this? And what did we do before we did this? And what we did before this is President Washington decided that it would be a good idea, our first president, that those papers, those artifacts belong to the individual. As a result, he takes them all to Mount Vernon. He's going to build some special place for it. It never happened. And all that disappeared. This marvelous, marvelous history. What some of the presidents have done before President Roosevelt, is given their papers and their artifacts to the Library of Congress or give it to the State Historical Society. But what many presidents did was they lost their papers because they kept them. They were sold, and they were sold especially for their signature on that piece of paper, not the content, or they were destroyed by fire. So we lost a great deal of history. So this is what we have come to is this brainchild of President Roosevelt. And he would be stunned to see what we have now. We have airplanes in museums, such as the flying White House in President President Reagan's White House. Are obviously getting mixed up here, in his museum and library. Let's go back and wind this all up by quoting this famous man who had this great idea. And the idea was, what is the value of these libraries? And he said, President Roosevelt, in order to be a great country, we have to do three things. We have to treasure our past, we have to believe in our future, and we have to have the wisdom to put those two together to build a better America. And that's the purpose of these presidential libraries. Thank you.